I had positioned myself in the main sitting room deliberately, not the study, too intimate, not the foyer, too exposed. The sitting room had windows overlooking the garden and a fireplace, and exactly enough space for everyone to fit without anyone feeling comfortable. Patricia stood to my right, Lawrence to my left. Marcus, and I watched my father's face when he saw Marcus. Marcus stood behind me, slightly to one side, arms folded. My father stopped walking when he saw his son. The expression that crossed his face was not grief, it was calculation recalibrating. "Marcus," his voice was flat. "Dad," Marcus said, nothing else. It was enough. My father recovered quickly, he always did. He turned his attention to me. "This ends today, Nora. We're filing a formal contest by end of business. We have 3 independent assessments questioning Edmund's cognitive state in the last 18 months, and testimony from his personal physician that he showed signs of—" "Dr. Werner retired 14 months ago," Lawrence said calmly, not looking up from the folder in his hands. "Any testimony from him would cover a period before the updated will was signed. Additionally, your grandfather's cognitive evaluations from that period, conducted at his own initiative, are on record with 3 law firms and his neurologist." My father's lawyer leaned in and whispered something. My father's jaw tightened. My uncle tried next. "This isn't just about the money, Nora, it's about what's appropriate. You're 28, you teach children, you have no experience managing a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. The board will never respect you, the employees will lose confidence, you'll destroy the company in 6 months." Patricia stepped forward. "I'm Patricia Osai. I've been COO of Ashford Logistics for 11 years. I'm also on the board. And I can tell you with specificity that 3 other board members are prepared to support Miss Ashford's leadership, with the existing management team providing operational continuity. The company isn't going anywhere." My father turned on Marcus now, fury barely leashed. "What do you think you're doing? You're throwing away everything I built for you, everything I protected. You choose her over your own family?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "Dad, I've watched you call this our family's legacy my whole life, while treating it like a personal bank account. I've watched you not visit him when he was in the hospital because it was a Tuesday and you had golf. I've watched you negotiate his estate at his funeral, and I've spent the last 12 hours asking myself why I was about to help you do to Nora what you've spent decades doing to him." The room was silent. "She's my sister," Marcus said, "and he chose her. And he was right." My mother made one last attempt. She crossed to me and took my hands and looked at me with an expression designed to resemble maternal love. "Nora, you don't want this. The pressure, the responsibility, the eyes of the entire industry on you. Let us help. That's all we're asking." I looked at her hands holding mine. "You never once came to one of my classroom performances," I said quietly. "Not one, in 12 years of teaching. Dad came once because grandfather was going and he didn't want to look bad, but you never came. You never asked my students' names." I gently removed my hands. "I've handled a classroom of 28 8-year-olds for 5 years. I can handle a board meeting." Helen appeared at the doorway. "I believe your cars are ready," she said. There was nothing left for them to do. My father walked to the door. He turned once. "This isn't finished," he said. "Yes, it is," Lawrence replied, still not looking up. "Legally, definitively, and permanently. Good morning, Gerald." The door closed. The room exhaled. Marcus sat down on the nearest chair like his legs had given out. I sat beside him. Neither of us spoke for a moment. "That was awful," he said. "Yes," I said. "Are you okay?" I thought about it, honestly. "I will be," I said. "Give me about 10 minutes." He almost smiled. For the first time in what I could remember, it looked like his grandfather's smile. 3 months passed. My father filed the contest. It lasted 11 days before his own lawyers advised withdrawal. The documentation was, as Lawrence had said, airtight. My uncle and Derek stopped returning calls after the first board meeting, where Patricia presented the operational plan, and 3 board members publicly stated their support. I did not move into the estate immediately. I finished out the school year first. I thought my grandfather would have appreciated that. On my last day, my class made me a card, 28 signatures in crayon, some of them spelling my name wrong in ways that made me laugh until I cried on the bus ride home. I kept it. It lives on the desk in the estate study, next to a photograph of my grandfather and me at his kitchen table, playing chess on a winter Sunday. Marcus joined the company in a new role, Director of Community Operations. His job was to be the bridge between the corporate structure and the regional divisions my father had wanted to cut. He was, as it turned out, very good at it. He and I had dinner every Sunday. We talked about grandfather a lot at first. Then we talked about other things, the way families do when they are finally being honest. The Ashford Foundation launched in the fall. We dedicated the first grants to education, teacher training programs, classroom supply funds for underfunded schools, and scholarships for first-generation college students. At the launch event, a woman from one of the beneficiary schools came to me afterwards and said her daughter wanted to be a teacher until someone told her teachers don't matter. "What happened?" I asked. "She met her third-grade teacher," the woman said, changed her mind back. I drove to the cemetery on a bright October morning when the leaves were gold and the air had that particular sharpness that means the year is turning. I brought white chrysanthemums. I sat on the cold ground beside the headstone. "I've been thinking," I told him, "about what you said that last visit, that most people see what you built as something to divide, and I was the only one who saw it as something to continue. I didn't understand it then. I thought you were just being sentimental, but what you were really telling me was that continuity isn't about control. It's about caring whether the thing you're protecting outlasts you." A gust of wind moved through the oaks. "Marcus is good, Grandpa. You were right about him. He just needed someone to stop letting him off the hook. The company is okay. Patricia knows what she's doing and she's teaching me, and I'm learning faster than either of us expected because it turns out running a classroom for 12 years is pretty decent preparation for running anything. And I'm okay, more okay than I thought I'd be." That night I sat at the grand piano in the main room, a piano I hadn't touched since I was 12, and I played through the only piece I still remembered by heart. Simple, slow, a little rough around the edges, but it filled the house, and somewhere in the resonance of those imperfect notes, in the warmth of a house that finally felt like mine, I understood what I had inherited. Not $9 billion, not a company. What I had inherited was the understanding that the people who love you, really love you, build things designed to catch you when you fall. They plan for your storms before you can see the clouds. My grandfather had spent decades building a net I never knew was there, and when I finally fell, when my family threw me out into the dark with a duffel bag and a brass key, it held. If you are watching this, maybe you have had someone like that in your life. Maybe you are trying to figure out how to be that for someone else. Start small. Show up on the Sundays. Call to ask if they have eaten. Drive through the snowstorm when they sound sad. The billions are just the proof. The love is the point. "I think this family finished itself," I said quietly. "A long time ago." I picked up my bag and walked through the door he was holding open. It closed behind me with a sound like something final. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, hands on the wheel, not starting the engine. Then my phone buzzed. A text from a number I almost didn't recognize. It was Marcus. It said, "Don't go back to your apartment tonight. Go to grandfather's estate. I'll explain when I get there." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I started the car. The estate gates rose out of the dark like something from another century. Iron and stone, tall oaks lining the drive, the house at the end glowing with quiet interior light as though it had been expecting me. The key my grandfather had given me years ago still worked. The lock turned, the door opened, and the smell hit me immediately. Lemon oil and cedar and old books. His smell. I stood in the foyer and let myself cry for exactly 60 seconds. Then I stopped, because I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. Miss Ashford? A woman stepped from the hallway shadows, silver-haired, 60s, wearing a practical cardigan and the expression of someone who has seen a great deal and been shaken by very little. "I'm Helen Park," she said. "I've managed this household for 22 years. Your grandfather told me, if anything happens to him, stay until you arrive." "He told you about me?" I asked. "He told me everything about you," she said simply. "Come, there's tea, and there's someone waiting." In the study, beside a fire that Helen had lit in anticipation, sat Lawrence Holt. Beside him, a woman I didn't recognize, sharp-eyed, 50s, in a blazer that meant business. "Nora," Lawrence said, standing, "this is Patricia Osei. She's been your grandfather's chief operating officer for 11 years. She knows this company better than anyone alive." Patricia didn't offer pleasantries. "Your grandfather briefed me 6 months ago. He said you'd need someone who could explain what you'd inherited in terms that weren't designed to intimidate you. That's me." "He planned this," I said slowly. "All of this?" "Edmund Ashford planned everything," Lawrence said. "He updated his will, arranged security upgrades on this property, established a legal trust structure that makes the estate nearly impossible to contest, and left recorded statements with 3 different attorneys." He handed me an envelope. My name on the front in my grandfather's handwriting. "Nora, if you're reading this, then the evening at your parents' house did not go well. I know your father. I know what he asked you to sign. You said no. I know you did because you are here. Here is what I need you to understand. The company is not the money. The money is the result. What I actually built is 7,000 employees who depend on this operation running with integrity, suppliers who trust our word, communities where we have invested for decades. That is the legacy. The people in this room, Lawrence, Patricia, and Helen, they are your foundation. Trust them. Learn from them. You don't need to know everything on day one. You just need to be honest about what you know and what you don't. Your family will come. They will threaten. They may even sue. Let them. The structure I've built will hold. But there is one more thing, Nora. Watch Marcus carefully. I believe there is more of his grandmother in him than he has allowed himself to show. I may be wrong. I have been wrong before. But watch. Grandfather. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my coat pocket. "He said to watch Marcus," I said. Lawrence nodded slowly. "He mentioned that to me as well." We didn't have to wait long. At 10 past midnight, there was a knock at the estate door. Helen answered it. Marcus walked in from the dark, hands in his pockets, his face carrying the look of someone who has made a decision that cost them something. He looked at me across the foyer. "I'm not on their side," he said. "I need you to know that." The room went very quiet. I let Marcus in because I didn't know what else to do. We sat across from each other in the study, Lawrence and Patricia staying deliberately quiet in the corner, and Marcus looked at his hands for a long moment before he spoke. "Dad called me 2 days after Grandfather's accident," he said, "before the funeral. He told me the will had to go his way, that Grandfather had been irrational in the last year, that we needed to present a united family front. He already had lawyers on the phone." "And you agreed," I said. "It wasn't an accusation, it was a question." "I didn't disagree," Marcus said. "That's not the same thing, but it's not much better either." He leaned forward. "Nora, I've worked in that company for 5 years. I know what it is. I know what Grandfather actually built, and what it would become under Dad's control within 18 months. Dad doesn't understand operations. He understands appearances. He would sell off the unprofitable regional divisions, which are also the ones in rural communities that almost have no other employer, and consolidate everything into the profitable urban corridors. He'd make the numbers look better in the short term and hollow the company out in the process." Patricia straightened in her chair. "He's right," she said quietly. "I've run those projections." Marcus continued. "I sat in that conference room today and I watched you walk in wearing your good dress, and I thought, she took the bus here. She took the bus to a will reading that was going to change her life, because she's still who she always was." He paused. And I've been sitting next to people who think that's a weakness. For the last hour of my drive here, I've been trying to figure out when I started agreeing with them. I studied my brother's face, looked for the angle, looked for what he wanted. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because grandfather's letter to me, the one Lawrence gave me separately today, said one thing." He handed into his jacket and placed a folded page on the table between us. He said, "You know the difference between right and wrong, Marcus. You always have. I'm waiting to find out if you'll choose it when it's costly." The room was very still. "Dad will see this as betrayal," Marcus said, "and he'll be right by his definition. I'll be cut off. I'll lose whatever was promised." "What do you want?" I asked. He looked at me steadily. "I want to help you protect what he built, not because I want anything from it, because he believed it was worth protecting, and I think he was right, and I've spent too long pretending otherwise." Silence. Lawrence spoke first. "For what it's worth, Edmund told me he hoped Marcus would come. He said, 'The boy has good bones. He just needs a reason to use them.'" I looked at my brother, really looked, for the first time in what might have been years. He didn't look like someone running a play. He looked like someone exhausted from pretending. "Okay," I said, "but I need you to understand something, Marcus. This isn't a transaction. I'm not trading loyalty for a position. You help because it's right. That's the only currency I'm working in." He nodded, once, firmly. "Then we should probably talk about what Dad is planning for tomorrow morning," he said. "They're coming here?" "With lawyers." His jaw tightened. "He wants it on record. He wants witnesses." I sat up straight. "Then let him come." They arrived at 8:45 the next morning. 4 cars. My father and mother, my uncle and Derek. 2 of my father's lawyers, all of them moving like people who believed this was already over. Helen met them at the door. She had the bearing of a woman who had turned away a senator. She was not impressed. "Miss Ashford is expecting you. Please follow me." I remember sitting on my kitchen floor until sunrise because my legs stopped working and the couch felt too far away. And I remember thinking over and over, he was supposed to call me Sunday. He always calls on Sunday. The funeral was 4 days later. My parents choreographed it like a performance. Front row, best seats, perfectly tailored black. My mother accepted condolences with practiced grace. My father shook hands and exchanged business cards. At a funeral, he exchanged business cards with men I'd never seen before. Marcus stood slightly apart from all of it. He kept glancing at me across the room with that same unreadable expression. I stood beside the casket for a long time after everyone moved to the reception. "I'll make you proud," I whispered to the still, familiar face beneath me. "Whatever that means, I'll figure it out." I had no idea how complicated that promise was about to become. 10 days after the funeral, the call came from Lawrence Holt, my grandfather's attorney. "The will is ready to be read. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, my office." He requested all immediate family be present. I almost didn't go. What did I expect? A keepsake, maybe? The antique chess set we used to play on together? A letter? I wore my good dress, the navy one I saved for parent-teacher conferences. I took the bus because my car was making a noise I couldn't afford to diagnose. Lawrence Holt's office was on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown. When I arrived, my parents were already seated like royalty, my father's lawyer beside him with briefcase open, as if this were a negotiation, not a grief proceeding. Marcus sat slightly apart from our parents, jacket rumpled like he'd slept in it. He gave me a small nod when I entered, nothing more. My Uncle Philip sat in the corner with his adult son, Derek, both of them wearing identical expressions of hungry anticipation. Lawrence Holt was a small man with silver glasses and the kind of stillness that commands rooms. He waited until we were all seated, then opened a leather binder. "Before I begin," he said, "I want to note that Edmund Ashford updated this will 14 months ago. He underwent full cognitive evaluation at that time, at his own request. There is no ambiguity about his capacity or his intentions. My father waved his hand. "Just read it, Lawrence." Lawrence did not flinch. "I, Edmund James Ashford, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my final will and testament. To my son Gerald and his wife Vivian, I leave the property at Lake Marion and a financial settlement of $2 million, which accounts for the loans I have forgiven over the past decade." The room went very still. "To my brother Philip and his son Derek, I leave the art collection currently housed in the estate library, valued at approximately $800,000. Philip's jaw tightened. "To my grandson Marcus," I saw Marcus lean forward almost imperceptibly, "I leave a 20-year employment guarantee at Ashford Logistics at his current senior operations level with full salary and benefits, in recognition of his genuine contributions to the company." Marcus sat back slowly. His face was unreadable again. Lawrence paused, removed his glasses, cleaned them with deliberate slowness. "And to my granddaughter, Nora Elizabeth Ashford, I leave the entirety of my remaining estate, all financial assets, all real property, all company holdings, all investments. The total value as of last quarter is $9,200,000,000. Silence. Then eruption. My father was on his feet before Lawrence finished the sentence. "That is absolutely absurd. She's a school teacher. She has never spent a single day in this business. This will is fraudulent, and we will prove it." My mother's composure shattered. $9 billion to a girl who clips coupons? Edmund would never. "He would," Lawrence said, with the quiet authority of someone who had been expecting exactly this. And he did, and he prepared for this reaction. He pressed a button on his desk. The wall panel slid open to reveal a screen, and there was my grandfather, alive, sitting in his study chair. If you are watching this, it means I have passed. Richard, Diane, Ethan, forgive me in this case, Gerald, Vivian, Philip, I love you as family, but I can no longer ignore what you have become. Greed has blinded you. You see me as a wallet, not as a father, not as a grandfather. Nora is different. She visits because she cares, not because she wants. She lives with integrity. She will carry my legacy with dignity." The screen went dark. My father swept his arm across the conference table, scattering papers everywhere. "This is manipulation," he shouted. He wasn't thinking straight. "The will is legally binding," Lawrence said. "Contesting it will be expensive and, given the documentation, nearly impossible." My father turned to me. His eyes were not sad, they were cold. "This isn't over, Nora," he said. I sat frozen, my grandfather's words still echoing in the room. I realized in that moment the fortune wasn't just money, it was a weight, a test, a responsibility, and my family would do everything in their power to take it from me. That evening, my father sent a single text: "Family dinner, 7 p.m., not optional." I knew what it was, but I went anyway, because some part of me, the part that had spent 28 years hoping, still believed that grief might soften them. It didn't. The dining room looked like a war council. My father stood at the head of the table, tie loosened, a glass of scotch in his hand. My mother perched beside him, composed again, in the way a wound looks calm when it has just gone numb. My uncle and Derek were there too, which told me this had been planned before I arrived. Marcus was not there. I noticed. I filed it away. My father didn't wait for me to sit. "You are going to sign a transfer of authority. I've had my lawyers draft it. You'll retain 20% of the liquid assets. That's more than $1.8 billion, more than enough for your lifetime. I will manage the company and the remaining holdings as they were meant to be managed." He slid a document across the table. 30 pages, already tabbed. I looked at the papers. I looked at my father. I thought of my grandfather's face on that screen. "No," I said. The dining room detonated. My father's fist hit the table hard enough to rattle the crystal. "You ungrateful, naive child. You have no idea what that company requires. You will destroy 60 years of work in 6 months." My mother's composure was silk over steel. "Nora, think about what you're doing. You are one woman with no business experience. Your grandfather was confused in his final year. This was a sentimental decision, not a rational one. Let the people who understand it protect it." "My uncle, we'll contest the will. We have grounds. You'll spend the next decade in litigation, and the company will suffer while you fight us in court." Derek, leaning back in his chair. "Just take the money and disappear back to your classroom, Nora. You don't belong in this world." Each sentence landed like a stone. Then I stood up. "I spent 20 years watching all of you treat him like an ATM with a pulse," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "I watched you skip his birthday for golf trips. I watched you borrow money and call it your due. I watched you not visit when he was sick because it was inconvenient. He chose me because I chose him, not his money. Him. And I am not signing anything." My father crossed the room in 4 steps and opened the front door. "Then you leave this house tonight. You are no longer my daughter. You don't call, you don't come back, you are finished in this family." I looked at him for a long moment. "My name is Nora Ashford, and 6 weeks ago I was grading spelling tests at a kitchen table that wobbled every time a truck passed outside my apartment window. I was nobody. A 3rd-grade teacher in a city that moves too fast to notice quiet people. I wore the same coat 3 winters in a row. I clipped coupons on Sunday mornings. I never complained because complaining felt like a luxury I couldn't afford either. Then my grandfather died, and the world I knew collapsed. Not because I lost him, though that nearly broke me, but because of what he left behind. $9 billion. All of it. To me." My father flipped the conference table. My mother screamed until her voice cracked. My uncle called his lawyers before we even left the building. And my brother, Marcus, he looked at me across the chaos with something I couldn't read. Not rage, not grief, something else entirely. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about loyalty, family, and the price of love. Stay with me, because this story doesn't end where you think it does. Before I tell you about the billions, you need to understand who I really was. Nora Ashford, 28 years old, 3rd-grade teacher at Maplewood Elementary in Cincinnati. Salary, $39,000 a year before taxes. My apartment was on the 4th floor of a building with a broken elevator. My neighbors argued every Tuesday. My radiator hissed like it was angry at me personally, and I loved it because it was mine. I had built that small life with my own hands, and I was proud of every crooked corner of it. My family was a different story. The Ashfords were old money, or at least they acted like it. My father, Gerald Ashford, had spent his entire adult life orbiting my grandfather's fortune without ever building anything of his own. He had the title of Vice President of Special Projects at my grandfather's company, a role that seemed to involve mostly long lunches and name-dropping. My mother, Vivian, collected friends the way other people collect receipts, quickly acquired and easily discarded when they stopped being useful. She had never once asked me what my students' names were. Then there was Marcus, my brother. 2 years older, quieter than the rest of them, and always watching. He had worked legitimately at grandfather's company for 5 years as an operations manager. He was good at it, actually, but our parents had convinced him that he deserved more, that the company should be his by birthright. I never quite believed he agreed with them, but I never asked. Maybe I should have. And then there was grandfather. Edmund Ashford, the man the business world knew as ruthless, brilliant, and relentless. The man I knew as the person who showed up at every single one of my school plays, sitting in the back row so he wouldn't block anyone's view. The man who called me every Sunday morning to ask if I had eaten breakfast. The man who once drove 4 hours in a snowstorm because I sounded sad on the phone. He had built his empire from nothing. A shipping company started in a rented garage with borrowed money and an idea. 60 years later, it was one of the largest private logistics companies on the continent, and he never forgot where he came from. On my last visit, 3 weeks before he died, he pressed my hand across the kitchen table and said something I hadn't fully understood until the moment his lawyer read his will. "Nora," he said, "I've watched everyone in this family for a long time. Most of them see what I've built as something to be divided. You're the only one who ever saw it as something to be continued." I laughed it off, told him he was being dramatic. He smiled like he knew something I didn't. He always did. It was a Wednesday, 11:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been grading math quizzes and my red pen had just run out of ink when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Miss Ashford." The voice was formal, controlled. "This is Detective Brennan with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling about your grandfather, Edmund Ashford." The pen rolled off the table. I didn't notice. "There was an accident on Route 9 this evening. A vehicle ran a red light and struck your grandfather's car at the intersection near the old mill. He was transported to Mercy General, but—" He paused. That pause lasted a century. "He didn't survive. I'm so sorry." I don't remember much of the next 12 hours. I remember calling Marcus, who answered on the first ring and said nothing for a long moment when I told him. I remember my father's voice when I called him, not broken, not devastated, calculating. "We'll need to contact the estate lawyers first thing in the morning."